Hey everyone. Before posting this blog that will follow, I feel a need to offer a little preamble, a little disclaimer, I guess. The blog that will follow is a discussion of Hillary's email situation and a set of predictions about what I am expecting or was expecting from any FBI Justice Department report about their email investigation. Just as I was finishing my video blog, I discovered that James Comey had just given a press conference in which he had said definitively that there will be no charges referred in the case of Hillary Clinton and her emails. So to some extent, he has mooted my blog. But there is still a fair amount of relevant information in the blog about what any of us should expect from any subsequent report issued by the Justice Department. As it stands, I don't know if there will be a report. We'll have to wait and see. Hey everyone, put your feet up, grab your favorite beverage. This could be a long and bumpy video blog. I'm going to be talking today about my expectations for the endgame in the Clinton email investigation. Now, thankfully, with Hillary Clinton's meeting with the FBI on Friday, we have reached the home stretch of this investigation. Almost certainly, the FBI is going to make some sort of public statement before the Republican convention later in this month, and certainly before the Democratic convention on the 25th of July. They don't want to be seen as intruding on the political process on either of those conventions. Now, before I get to all of my expectations about what will happen with the Department of Justice decision, I'd like to raise one question. When Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch had their little get-together on the tarmac in Phoenix on Monday, did they both know that Hillary was going to have a meeting with the FBI on Friday? Was that meeting already scheduled? Or did the social get-together between Lynch and Clinton in Phoenix cause such embarrassment to both the Justice Department and the Clinton campaign that both parties realized, man, we have to get together, finalize this investigation, and bring it to some resolution? The public is losing patience with the investigation, and they're losing patience with Hillary. Which happened? Chuck Todd interviewed Hillary later in the week, but didn't ask her that question. If the meeting was already scheduled, it makes it all the more extraordinary that they thought it was appropriate to get together for a 30-minute schmooze with one another. Maybe we'll find out eventually how that happened. Now, when a lot of pundits talk about the outcome of the investigation, they often talk about it in all or nothing terms. On the one hand, will Hillary be indicted? On the other hand, will she be given a clean bill of health? I think the decision is far more likely to fall in the middle. Even if Hillary is not indicted, while the Justice Department has no legal obligation to issue a report on their findings, from a political standpoint, it's almost certain that they will. For example, we've already had the Inspector General of the State Department issuing his report. So the Justice Department is going to feel compelled to justify this one-year investigation, all the interviews given, all the manpower placed on the investigation, the fact that one individual was given immunity from prosecution, and frankly, the public deserves to know what they found. Now, as we all remember, the IG of the State Department's report was very harsh and very damning of Hillary. I would expect that the Justice Department's report, whether they decide to indict or not, will be even harsher because, in fact, this is a criminal investigation. They will have had an opportunity to interview Hillary and all of her principal aides, all of whom stonewalled the Inspector General of the State Department. So I would expect there's going to be a pretty stern tone to any report issued by the Justice Department. Now, what I have done is I have made a list of the things that I would like to know about the investigation once it is issued. And I'd like to run down my list one by one. First of all, I'd like to know, did the Justice Department find that there was a kind of informal conspiracy among Hillary and her aides to prevent her emails from coming to light and to circumvent Freedom of Information requests? Let's just remember the facts. For 4 years running, from 2009 to 2013 when she left office, not one email was produced by the State Department to any of the people filing Freedom of Information requests. For example, when the Associated Press would file its requests for documents from Hillary, they got no emails. When Vice News filed a request, they got no emails. They all got the same response. There are no documents that are responsive to your request. So did they find that this was a kind of conspiracy? We're not going to let Hillary's emails see the light of day. So the first question I would ask Cheryl Mills or Huma Abedin, Hillary's top aides, is, didn't you know that when people filed FOIA requests, they were getting stiffed by the State Department? And if the answer is, well, yes, we knew, I would then ask, why didn't you do something to correct that? And the only viable answer I can think of is, well, we didn't see it as our responsibility to do their work for them, which is not illegal, probably, but it certainly suggests that there was an element of bad faith in the way that Clinton and her aides were operating. So once any Justice Department report tells me that, what I want to know is, how does that comport with existing law? Does that violate the law or not? Explain to me how that behavior comports or does not comport with the law. The second thing I'd like to know from a report is, what about Hillary's failure to turn over her emails when she left office? I mean, the law clearly stipulates that a government official is responsible for turning over their work product once they leave office. It needs to be available for archiving. It needs to be available for congressional oversight. It needs to be available for Freedom of Information requests, etc. Now, Hillary would say, well, look, the reason I didn't turn over my emails is because my emails were already in the system. Since everybody else played by the rules and used state.gov domains, when I sent emails to those people, they all had my emails. Well, that's not a very compelling explanation. First of all, the law states that your work product has to be readily available and readily findable. That was clearly not the case with Hillary's emails, because for 4 years, the State Department could not find them. Essentially what Hillary was doing was she was hiding in plain sight. Yes, her emails were there, but they were in a domain that nobody was looking for, in a domain that nobody could find. And I think she knew full well that nobody could find her emails until 2014, when the Benghazi Committee went looking for them. One of the facts that gets very little attention is that there are currently 38 lawsuits pending at the State Department, filed by entities like the Associated Press, Vice News, Judicial Watch, 38 separate lawsuits. So it gives you a sense of, A, what a mess she left the State Department, and B, how much legal activity and taxpayer dollars are going into fending off these lawsuits right now. Further, even if you accept Hillary's explanation at face value, well, all my emails were already in the system. The truth is, they weren't in the system. Suppose 10% of her emails did not go to State Department workers. Suppose they went to business people out in the community. Suppose they went to academics, where she might have had an exchange about foreign policy issues. Suppose emails were sent to foreign officials. There would be still a large number of emails outstanding, even if the State Department had access to all the ones within its own system. So given the way that Hillary was operating, even under the best interpretation, there would have been non-compliance. So I want to know once again, what is the legal status of failing to turn over 30,000 emails, 50,000 pages of emails? Does that comport with the law or not? So far I've been focusing on the public records transparency aspect of Hillary's conduct with her emails. So let me transition to the area that most people focus on, which is her handling of classified information. First of all, let me remind everybody that the initial problem that the security people at the State Department had with Hillary wasn't with her server, because they didn't know about the server. The initial problem that they had was with her use of the BlackBerry. The BlackBerry is notoriously unsecured as a digital platform, and Hillary was issued repeated warnings about using her BlackBerry for government business. The security people were not only concerned about the possibility of classified information being passed, but they were also concerned about a category of information called SBUs, which is sensitive but unclassified information. For example, suppose somebody gets access to your BlackBerry and gains information on all of the telephone numbers that you called. So they become aware of all the phone numbers of top State Department officials, or become aware of your calendar and know where you're going to be at every moment of the day, or where your associates are going to be at every moment of the day. That information isn't necessarily something we think of as classified, but it's certainly dangerous information when it becomes available to some individual who might want to do harm to the United States or some individual within the United States. So when your own security department says, first of all, when you come to your office at the State Department, you have to lock up your BlackBerry. We have so little faith in the security of BlackBerries that we will not even allow you to use your BlackBerry when you're in your office. Doesn't that tell you you shouldn't be using your BlackBerry at all? Doesn't that tell you that you should come up with a far more secure way to engage in government business? And if you refuse to adhere to those admonitions from the security people, what level of negligence are you exhibiting? And at what point does that negligence become criminal in its nature? That's what I want to know from the report. What does the Justice Department think of that conduct? And let me throw in one little factoid that I'll wager is unknown to 99% of the people who are watching this video. One of the underlying core reasons for Hillary's behavior with her emails is she doesn't know how to use a computer. I mean, as remarkable as that sounds, Hillary Clinton, former senator from New York, Secretary of State, does not know how to use a computer. She is unable, as we speak, to turn on a computer, send an email, or receive an email. Now, in my view, the first thing that should have happened is the security people should have said, Madam Secretary, we're going to send you to one-day computer camp. And we're going to show you, just like we show our mothers and our grandmothers, how to send and receive an email, because you're going to need that in the conduct of your office as Secretary of State, because we need to give you a secure digital platform that will replace your BlackBerry. Part of the problem here is that Hillary was the Secretary of State. She was the boss. She was in a position to shut down the few people who had misgivings, not only about her BlackBerry, but her server. So again, what was the level of negligence displayed by the Secretary of State? And to what extent does that comport with existing law? That's what I'd like to know. The fourth thing I'd like to know is, did Hillary or Huma Abedin or Cheryl Mills encourage the guy who set up the server, Brian Pagliano, who was working for the State Department but moonlighting for Hillary? Did any of them encourage him to lie on his State Department financial form, omitting the fact that Hillary was paying him to service and set up her computer? And if what they were doing was so above board, as Hillary has told us numerous times, why did Brian Pagliano plead the Fifth? Why did just last week he plead the Fifth 125 times when he was deposed in a civil suit by Judicial Watch? I'd like the report to tell me that. The fifth thing I'd like to know is about attempts to hack Hillary's server. Was there a successful hack of the server? And even if there were unsuccessful attacks on the server, why did she not report that to the security division of the State Department? Isn't that a pretty serious thing? When you're shutting down your server because you believe you've been hacked, why are you not going immediately to the security people and saying, look, we have a problem. We need to work together to fix this problem? And once again, what level of negligence is embodied in that failure? The sixth thing I'd like to know is, did she in fact turn over all relevant emails to the State Department? She's told us that she turned over 55,000 pages of emails. They delivered them in big boxes to the State Department. She's made much of the fact that she didn't want any of the copious emails involving Chelsea's wedding or any other personal matters to become public. Okay, that makes sense. However, what has happened recently is that numerous emails have come to light that she never turned over to the State Department in the first place. And even though we may be getting a skewed sample of emails that had never been public before, the ones that I have seen all tend to have an embarrassing flavor to them. They involve emails between Hillary and Sidney Blumenthal, for example. Sidney Blumenthal was persona non grata in the Obama administration. They had such a low opinion of him that when Hillary wanted to hire him in the State Department, it was not allowed. So it's very interesting that Hillary didn't seem to turn over numerous emails that involve her correspondence with Sidney Blumenthal. What's that about? A second category of emails that were never turned over originally involve Hillary's discussions with her aides about the server itself, about whether it was being hacked, about what kind of arrangement they wanted to make with the emails and so forth. So her very deliberations about the server with her associates, those emails were not turned over originally to the State Department. So when somebody says, not only have I turned over all relevant emails, I've bent over backwards and turned over more emails than I even needed to. And then you find that there are emails missing. How does that comport with existing law? So those are the things I would like to learn from any upcoming Department of Justice report on the email scandal. And there are any number of things that could happen. For example, the Justice Department may decide not to press charges against Hillary, but may throw up one of her aides as a sacrificial lamb. I don't expect that to happen because I think if it did, the level of outrage would be off the charts. I don't think the Justice Department would do that, but it's a possibility. Now, as I reach the end of this video blog, I know what a number of you are thinking. Wow, you're cold. You're throwing all this shade at the presumptive Democratic nominee. And to an extent I am. But I am for two reasons. First of all, Hillary made her bed. I expect her to face the same consequences that anybody else would face for what is clearly reprehensible conduct. It may not be illegal conduct. Second of all, if Hillary is indicted, to be perfectly honest with you, the phrase President Liz Warren has a nice ring to it. President John Kerry, President Joe Biden, President Bernie Sanders, President Martin O'Malley. I don't care. I like all of those. I would simply like to have a Democratic nominee who isn't at 55 or 60% unfavorability rating in the polls, an unfavorability that I think is richly deserved in this case. Now, to be sure, I'll vote for Hillary. After all, Hillary is running against the lowest character person who has ever run for high office from a major party in my lifetime. Think about it this way. Donald Trump makes Richard Nixon look like a Boy Scout by comparison. Richard Nixon had a secret enemies list. Donald Trump will stand in front of a podium and point out his various enemies in the press and call them out by name. What Richard Nixon felt he needed to hide, Donald Trump will boast about. Richard Nixon, for example, used the offices of the executive branch to go after his political enemies. Donald Trump has already promised us that if he were the president, he would try to abridge the First Amendment so the press couldn't criticize him so much. He's upfront about it. Richard Nixon, when you listen to the Nixon tapes, was a racist and an anti-Semite behind closed doors. By contrast, bigotry is embedded in the very policies of Donald Trump. So Donald Trump is the worst candidate we have ever seen in my lifetime. But that is simply to say that I think any quality Democrat could beat him, particularly a Democrat with higher favorability ratings than Hillary Clinton. Even though I fully expect Hillary, if the nominee, to win, the closeness of the weekly polls that I'm seeing are making me very uncomfortable. And while I'm wrapping up here, let me just offer one last thought. The person that should be the most pissed off about this situation is Barack Obama. Barack Obama, for example, didn't have to make Hillary Clinton the Secretary of State. There were lots of options for him at the time. And I was one of the few people at the time that opposed his choice of Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. Why? For me, the quintessential diplomat is John Kerry. He was the second option, and I thought that he would have been a far better choice. But also, one has to remember back in 2009 that he had a major set of things on his plate legislatively. Not the least of them was getting universal health care through. Now you have to remember that Teddy Kennedy had just died, so Obama didn't have Kennedy to help him do some of the heavy lifting with respect to health care. Remember also that Obama's first choice to be head of HHS, Health and Human Services, wasn't Kathleen Sebelius, it was Tom Daschle. Daschle, however, disqualified himself by not having paid taxes for the last 3 years. So that plan went kablooey. So I felt at the time that Hillary Clinton would have been much more valuable to the president as the junior senator from New York, helping Obama usher health care through the Congress. I thought that was her best position. But Obama had other ideas. He gave her the lofty position of being Secretary of State. And what did she do? She immediately went rogue with her server. Uncool. So it's possible that the Justice Department will issue a bare bones skeletal report that will actually give us very little information. But I don't expect that because I think there'd be quite a clamor and uproar if they took that course. And the events of the last week have done nothing to enhance Loretta Lynch's reputation. I think she needs to produce a good, solid, informative report about this investigation. Should happen within the next 2 weeks or so. I'm Jeff Rowan. Thanks for watching.